Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jen Sugarmeyer, your host of Mindset in the Morning, brought to you by Higher in Heels. I have this piece of hair. And I want to thank you for joining me here today. We are here live 5 days a week, 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, but because it's YouTube, you can watch whenever. First, I would love if you would hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss anything. And the intention here is really that we're getting intentional about our mornings and how we position our minds so that when we go out in the day that we really are just kicking butt so that we are at our highest potential, our optimum self. And it all comes here. This is where we create suffering. This is where we create happiness. This is where we create our experiences. And we're going to talk about that today. So if you could subscribe, and if you like this, if you could also share it with some other women that, are high achieving and out there doing the dang thing and could use some extra mindset, not, oh, I think you need a little mindset. Everybody needs mindset. Every single one of us. So it's not just one or the other. It's everyone. I will tell you, this is work that I have to do every single day. So it's not that you just get to a mindset and you think, oh man, I've got this beautiful mindset. No, we got to do it every single day. So that's what this is all about. So like, subscribe, share. This week we are talking about pivoting. And pivoting is such an important topic because we are constantly faced with decisions in our life. And so it can be a lot of times we think about pivoting as an entrepreneur and pivoting within our business. But the truth is, pivoting is just another word for change. And it could be change within a relationship or change within where you live or your friendships, or there could be something else in your life that's change. And a pivot is just that you've decided to go this direction instead of this direction. And on Words Matter Wednesday, because today is Wednesday and we talk about words that matter, words that can change the whole game of what we're doing. We're going to talk about this idea called failure and if failure actually exists or not. So this week on Monday, Tuesday, we talked about when you should pivot. So I would encourage you to go back and listen to when you should or should not pivot. And again, as I've said both days, don't go back and say, but Jen told me to pivot. These are just suggestions of times when you can't, when you should, or times when you shouldn't. But really, if you're going down a path and you keep going and you've given it some time and you're not getting the return on results that you want, and again, I mean, the situation could be anything that we're talking about here, then it's probably time to pivot. Are you putting in more resources than what you are getting back? But what keeps people in fear so often is this idea of failure. So let's just talk about experiences and how experiences are what we make of them. Have you ever been to an amusement park and someone's having a really good time and another person isn't? They're both at the same amusement park. Maybe they went on a ride, those roller coaster rides, and somebody comes off and they're like, that was so amazing. Let's do it again. And then there's someone else and they're like, I am never doing that again. Never, ever, ever. And the truth is, it was the same ride, but it was two different people, two different experiences. So, this is why it's so important to focus on our own experience because that's what it comes down to. We cannot control what other people are experiencing. Even if you're in the service industry and you're like, I want people to have a good experience, you can do what you can to make it a nice experience. But it's still up to the individual to determine, is this truly a nice experience? Maybe it's a dining, or maybe it's staying in a hotel or whatever that may be. You don't know the person's background. The person may be used to staying in these five-star hotels, and yours is really, really nice, but it's not a five-star. Your food may be really, really good, but somebody doesn't like whatever kind of food. They don't like your type of food. They like something else. So it's it's up to the individual to create that experience. And we, as maybe the service provider, can do whatever it is to make that a nice experience. But people are going to be going on the roller coaster, and some people are going to walk off saying, that was a great experience. And there are other people, and they're going to say, that was not a great experience. So, knowing that experiences are all created up here and that it's up to the individual. When we talk about failure, only you can decide if you want to believe in this word called failure. That's completely up to you. So, some companies that have pivoted over time, and so you just tell me what you think of their pivoting. So, Twitter actually started out as a company called Odeo, and they were going to be a podcasting platform. Podcasts are very popular these days. I know that there's a ton of them that are out there. And at the time that Odeo was getting started, so was iTunes. And iTunes was really taking the lead in that space. So Odeo decided to pivot away from podcasts, and they started to they went towards Twitter, which now is, I don't know what it's worth, but I would say probably a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, everybody's on Twitter. I was like, what? The president is on Twitter? What is the president doing tweeting? But that's it. It is such a powerful platform. Now, if anybody looks at Twitter, would we say, man, I don't know, that was a little bit of a failure? No, they pivoted. They saw that someone else was going towards the same industry and that the competition was going to be fierce. And they decided, hey, we see a blue ocean over here, and we're going to move towards that blue ocean. Some people may have seen it was a failure, but do you think it's a failure? I don't know. It's worth billions of dollars. So that's up to you to decide. Starbucks started out in 1971. And, we think about Starbucks, we think about coffee and the experience and whatnot. And they actually started out as selling coffee makers. Yeah, it was coffee makers and coffee beans. That's what it was until 1983. So for 12 years, that's what they did. They sold coffee makers. And then they went over to Italy, and they brewed some of that coffee, and they said, oh my gosh, we are going to sell actual coffee, not just the coffee beans, not just the coffee maker, but we're going to shift our model and we're going to start selling coffee. Starbucks is on every single corner. Is that a failure? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. Nintendo. When we think of Nintendo, we think of like Donkey Kong and Duck Hunt and Mario Brothers and all those fun things. I remember when I was a kid, which was many, many moons ago, I remember going over and playing that and dun, 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 da, 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 da. You know what I'm talking about? And that's what we thought of Nintendo as. You know where they actually started out? Selling vacuum cleaners. To me, that is the most like cliche thing ever. Like going around and I'm a vacuum salesman or whatever. That's what Nintendo was, y'all. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine that pivot? That's like not even in the ballpark. That's not like I was selling coffee makers. Now I'm going to sell coffee. Like that's like I was selling vacuum cleaners and now I want to play games. It's completely different. And people may have thought, oh my gosh, you are crazy. How can you just go from one to the other? But they did. And it was genius. And Nintendo is still around today after all these many, many, many of years, still creating games. It was a genius pivot. It was. And maybe the vacuum sales thing, maybe it was a little bit saturated market. I feel like, I don't know if we still talk about going around selling vacuum cleaners, but I feel like that was something we heard about a lot once upon a time. Like all these vacuum salesmen going door to door, like that. There were just like millions of them. I don't know. I just imagine that's what the world was like June Cleaver, and then like the vacuum salesman. Like that was the world once upon a time. But do we think of Nintendo as a failure? No way. We had to pivot away from these millions of vacuum cleaners. It was time. It was time to differentiate yourself, time to go towards something that was a little more proven. Here's another one. This one will blow your mind. Avon. Okay, Avon. Everybody, you know Avon. Every woman probably knows Avon. Even if you haven't tried the product, you're aware of the model. It started out as a book salesman. This dude was out there selling books, and he would give a free perfume. And what he realized is that the women were more into the perfume than they were the books. So he's like, well, then what am I doing trying to sell books? Why don't I just sell perfume? So he started recruiting some of these women to help him out. And sure enough, Avon was born, and boom, multi-billion-dollar industry. All of these are. All of these are. Nintendo, Twitter, Starbucks, Avon. These are insane, the level of success. But when they started out, do you think that that idea of failure kept them where they were at? I mean, no, because they went ahead. They proceeded forward. But it can hurt our ego sometimes. We get stuck in this ego phase of, hmm, what are people going to think? Is this a failure? And yeah, it can be a tough one for us to wrap our head around. I mean, nobody wants to be a failure. That word is just an icky word. And I've shared failure is one of my favorite topics. And if you've tuned in, we talk about failure quite often. We talked about it on the show several, maybe a couple months ago. And failure is actually something that you can decide to remove from your vernacular altogether. So you don't have to subscribe to this word called failure at all. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it pivot. You can call it change. You can call it doesn't matter. You can call failure whatever you want. You can call failure failure as long as you don't associate it with these negative feelings and, just all the things that go that the ickiness that goes along with failure. Because I have talked to some people and they're like, I don't think failure is a bad thing. I'm like, okay. I think a lot of people do. We think failure, like, oh, you failed your math exam. That means you gotta take it over and, you gotta go home to mom and be like, I got an F. And you gotta have that conversation. And mom's like, you gotta study harder and you're grounded. Like that, I think to a lot of people is the idea of failure. But failure is really just one of two things. And it's a lesson, so you learn from it. Okay, you failed your math exam. You got to study harder. You got to go back and relearn the formulas. You got to go back and reteach yourself. You got to surround yourself with different people that are, into math. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But it's just a lesson. Okay. All right. I have to spend more time studying. That's what it comes down to. I can't just look at the formulas. I mean, did you ever try to do that when you were in school? You're like, oh, I don't need to study for this test. I'm just going to cram it in my brain as I'm walking to the test. And then you fail because, or, you don't pass the test because you tried to cram it. So maybe your lesson isn't just go back and study more, but make sure you take the time to study. Like that's a lesson. That's a very good lesson that you should be taking from that. Or it could be a course correction. And like a lot of these, they were, we talked about Nintendo starting out as, selling vacuum cleaners and then they decided to pivot, to shift and yeah. So maybe that was, hey, I've gone down this road so much and it is a saturated market. It is time to pivot. So it's not, wow, that was a failure. It was, wow, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not, because this is a red ocean full of sharks. I need to go over here to a blue ocean of opportunity. We talk about blue ocean and red ocean a lot when we're talking about business. But again, you can apply this to anything in your life. It doesn't just have to be business. It's your friends, it's where you live, it's your relationships, it's everything. It's your math test that you're trying to cram for. And so, are you going towards this red ocean full of sharks? Or is it time to pivot like Twitter did? Twitter was like, holy moly, there's already iTunes that's doing a podcasting platform. I need to do something different. So I went over here. But our egos get in the way sometimes. And we think, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? And we start going through all the scenarios. Are they going to trust me? Are they going to believe in me? Are they going to, talk badly about me? So many things. I tell you what, when I decided to pivot away from corporate America and do my own thing, that was a huge thing. It was. And it was not, it was you know, there were some things in my head, and I had to coach myself through those, like, gosh, are people even gonna take me seriously as a coach? All they've known me is as Jen who goes and like, my last CEO called me Jen the money lady because I would go in and I would save millions and millions of dollars and whatever, and so I had something I was known for, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, "That's not what I wanna do. That's not what I wanna do with my life." So are people gonna take me seriously? Is anybody gonna hire me because I've never done it before? Are people gonna think that I gave up? So all of these things started to go through my mind, and I thought, "Wait, hold on. This is just a course correction in my life." Okay, and I don't look badly on anything that I did when I was in corporate. No, I'm like, those are all experiences to help build me to where I am today. I am so smart on so many levels because of my experience while I was in corporate. So I don't look down on it at all. It built me, it prepared me. And now I decided, okay, time to shift. That's all. So I didn't have to, you know, I mean, I absolutely could have stayed where I was at, but I chose to be happy. So I had to take this idea that failure doesn't exist and remind myself that this isn't a failure. This is a choice. And you're going towards something grander. It is the experience that you make of it. I remember when I rolled out, I talk about this a lot because it was really one of these like aha moments for me. And I rolled out one of my first courses called the Untouchable Mindset. And a friend's dad asked me, he said, "Hey, what are you up to these days?" We were having dinner. There was a group of us having dinner. And he said, "So what are you up to these days?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I just put this course together and rolled it out." And he just, "How much money have you made?" And I was like, "What?" Because his definition of success was monetary. My definition of success was all the work that it took me to get there. It showed my progress in terms of my mindset and how strong my mindset was over the years, had become over the years. And just me being able to create a course and put it online and go through all the development of it. And I mean, I outsourced that, but I had to go through the user experience and the UI testing and all of that. So, I mean, I absolutely could have taken on his opinion of success equals money, but I decided not to because it's my own experience. And I can't take on everybody else's experience because I don't know. I don't know what brought them to that point where they had their own opinion, you know, their own experience. That's why nobody else's opinion matters, only yours. So, my point is stay in your lane. If it's time to pivot, pivot. But don't let this idea of failure stop you from moving forward because it's not failure unless you want it to be failure. And then it can be failure. But I don't think if we looked at Twitter, Starbucks, Avon, Nintendo, that anybody's going to say that those were failures. And now let's say that you have to fold your business or you walk away from your marriage or whatever it is. And you're like, oof, yeah, but there is no like pivot into $1 billion anything. Well, it was a lesson learned, wasn't it? That's it. And you build and you grow And that's that. So failure doesn't have to exist if you don't want it to, and only you can make that choice. So that's it. We're just talking about pivoting, and you can decide if you want to fail or not. But I'm telling you, you don't ever have to fail. You can make that decision right now. Course correction, lesson learned, boom, that's done. Other people's opinions don't matter. We are going to wrap this up. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, or because it's YouTube, you can watch whenever you want. But I am Jen Sugarmeyer, your host of Mindset in the Morning. And yep, that's it for today. So we're coming up. We want the world to know. We're going to let it show. That's right, because we're coming up. We want the world to know. We're gonna let it show. Sometimes like I hit the notes and sometimes I'm a little off. I was a little off, but that's okay. Not a failure, just a lesson learned. All right. See you tomorrow. Cheers.